Let us begin by understanding this clearly, and let us understand it without resistance. What we are about to take up cannot be learned, and it cannot be achieved. There is nothing here that the human mind can master, no formula that can be memorized, no words that can be repeated until a result appears. If that were possible, truth would long ago have been reduced to a system, and God would be at the disposal of those most skilled in language. But God has never yielded himself to words, and truth has never been subject to technique. We are not entering into an exercise. We are not entering into a practice. We are not entering into a method. We are entering into a recognition. And the first thing that must be recognized is this: the very effort to use truth is the thing that obscures it. Scripture tells us, "Be still and know that I am God." It does not say, "Repeat and know." It does not say, "Affirm and know." It does not say, "Concentrate and know." It says, "Be still." And stillness is not something you do. Stillness is what remains when doing has ceased. Now the world today is filled with voices telling us to declare, to affirm, to claim, to decree. And while these things may have their place on certain levels of thought, they must never be confused with spiritual realization. The moment truth is used as a means to an end, it ceases to be truth and becomes a tool of the personal mind, and God cannot be used. When Moses stood before the burning bush and asked, "Whom shall I say sent me?" the answer did not come as a doctrine, nor as a ritual, nor as a command. The answer came as being itself. I am that I am. Not I will be, not I shall become, not I am able to do, but simply, eternally, I am. And let us see at once the danger that lies before us. The human tendency is to take even the highest revelation and turn it into something to be done. We say, if I say I am often enough, something will happen. We say, if I repeat the words, I will change my life. But the moment I am is spoken with an objective in mind, it is no longer I am. It has already been reduced to a personal declaration, and God has been turned into an instrument. The Master warned us of this very thing when he said, "Take no thought." He did not say, "Take right thought." He said, "Take no thought." And again, the kingdom of God cometh not with observation. You cannot watch it arrive. You cannot measure it. You cannot induce it. It is, or it is not recognized. So let us be very clear at the outset. This is not positive thinking. This is not auto-suggestion. This is not self-hypnosis. This is not even prayer as the world usually understands prayer. For prayer, in its highest sense, is not asking God to do something, but acknowledging that God is. The psalmist said, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." He did not say, "The Lord will become my shepherd if I ask correctly." He spoke from recognition, not hope. And it is recognition alone that reveals truth. Now the human mind feels uneasy when it is told there is nothing to do. It wants activity. It wants direction. It wants a role. But spiritual realization begins precisely where the personal sense yields its desire to control. "Except ye become as little children," the Master said, "ye shall not enter the kingdom of heaven." And a child does not attempt to manage life. A child rests in being. The tragedy of much spiritual practice is that it keeps the practitioner at the center. I am affirming. I am declaring. I am trying to realize. But the truth is this: the I that tries to realize God is the very I that must be surrendered. I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. Until that statement is understood as experience and not poetry, truth remains distant. So we must begin by letting go of the desire to make something happen. We must be willing, even if only for a moment, to abandon the effort to improve, to heal, to demonstrate, to change. For as long as we are trying to become something, we are confessing that we are not that which God already is. God does not improve. God does not heal. God does not evolve. God is. And when God reveals himself as individual being, that being is complete, whole, and finished from the beginning. Before Abraham was, I am. Not before Abraham was, I prepared myself. Not before Abraham was, I worked toward realization. Simply, I am. If there is restlessness in you as you hear this, do not resist it. Restlessness is only the personal sense discovering that it has reached the edge of its jurisdiction. Beyond that edge lies grace. Beyond that edge lies revelation. Beyond that edge lies the silence in which God speaks. We are told, the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Not because silence earns God's presence, but because silence is the absence of interference. And when interference ceases, that which has always been present stands revealed. So let us make no attempt to define God, no attempt to describe him, no attempt to use him. Let us simply be willing to stop outlining, willing to stop asking, willing to stop directing the course of our own unfoldment. For not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. If something in you is waiting for instruction, gently set that aside. If something in you is waiting for results, gently release that as well. We are not here to accomplish. We are here to recognize. And recognition begins when the mind bows and the heart becomes still. Be still, the voice says, not tomorrow, not later, not after understanding. Be still and know. And that knowing does not come after stillness. It is revealed as stillness. Now we come to a point at which many earnest seekers stumble, and it is well that we face it without fear and without apology. The words I am cannot be used. The moment they are used, they are no longer true. They cannot be employed as a means to an end, because they are the end. They are not a statement about reality. They are reality itself. When God spoke to Moses from the bush that burned and was not consumed, he did not reveal a name that could be invoked, nor a title that could be repeated for protection or power. He revealed being, I am that I am. And then he added, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. Not a person, not a force, not an influence, being itself. Now notice this. God did not say, I am strong. He did not say, I am abundant. He did not say, I am victorious. All of these would already have implied limitation, for strength implies weakness somewhere. Abundance implies lack somewhere. Victory implies conflict somewhere. God did not define himself, because definition belongs to the realm of form. God revealed himself as self-existent, self-sustaining, self-knowing, being. And this is why every attempt to add something to I am diminishes it. The moment we say, I am seeking health, we have confessed separation from life. The moment we say, I am trying to realize supply, we have placed supply outside of being. The moment we say, I am becoming spiritual, we have denied that spirit already is. The Master understood this perfectly. That is why he did not say, I will become the light of the world, but I am the light of the world. He did not say, I will attain life, but I am the life. And yet he also said, why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. Do you see the balance? The personal sense is never glorified, yet the divine identity is never denied. Here is the subtlety that the intellect cannot grasp. When I am is spoken from the personal sense, it is arrogance. When I am is recognized as God appearing as individual being, it is humility. The human mind fears this teaching because it imagines, it exalts the person. In truth, it dissolves the person entirely. As long as we believe that there is a me who must use I am to get something, we are still living in the belief of separation. We are still believing that God is somewhere else, that life must be improved, that harmony must be achieved. But the prophet tells us, I am the Lord, I change not. If God does not change, then reality does not evolve into perfection. It is perfect and must be recognized as such. This is why affirmations, when carried to their extreme, eventually exhaust the sincere student. There comes a point where repeating truth no longer satisfies, because the soul senses that truth is not something to be said, but something to be lived. In that day, said the Master, ye shall know that I am in my Father, and ye in me, and I in you, not spoken, known. And how does one come to this knowing? Not by striving upward, not by declaring louder, not by convincing oneself. One comes to this knowing by letting go of the belief that one is separate from being. The ego does not ascend into God. The ego yields and disappears, and what remains is God appearing as consciousness. You see now why I am cannot be practiced. You cannot practice being. You cannot rehearse existence. You cannot improve identity. You can only stop denying it. The Apostle Paul caught a glimpse of this when he said, for in him we live and move and have our being. Not toward him, not with him, but in him. And if this is true, then our problem has never been how to get into God's presence, but how to stop imagining that we are outside of it. Let us be honest. Much of our prayer is an attempt to persuade God to notice us. Much of our meditation is an attempt to reach a state where God will respond. But God does not respond. God reveals. And revelation does not come to the one who seeks, but to the one who yields. Not by works of righteousness which we have done, Paul tells us, but according to his mercy he saved us. Salvation, healing, harmony, these are not rewards for correct spiritual behavior. They are the natural revelation of truth when false identity dissolves. So when we speak of I am, let us never speak of it lightly. Let us never attach it to desire. Let us never use it as a lever. Let us approach it as Moses did, barefoot, with the shoes of human reasoning removed, standing on holy ground. For the ground of being is always holy. Consciousness is holy. Awareness is holy. And when we cease trying to make I am do something for us, we begin to discover that I am has always been living us. At that moment, prayer becomes silence. Seeking becomes resting. And identity ceases to be a question. I am that I am. And there is nothing more to say. Now we come to a point that the human mind resists more than any other, and yet it is the very point upon which freedom rests. There must come a yielding, not a destruction, not a struggle, not a battle, but a yielding of the personal sense of self. Until this yielding takes place, truth may be admired, quoted, even believed, but it will not be lived. The personal sense says, I am the one who must understand. I am the one who must heal. I am the one who must improve, overcome, and arrive. But the Master said plainly, without me, ye can do nothing. And again, take no thought for your life. These are not poetic sayings. They are statements of law. They tell us that the personal self is not the doer, not the source, not the cause. The personal self lives in time. It remembers yesterday and anticipates tomorrow. It measures progress. It fears loss. It seeks security. It says, I was sick, now I am better. Or I was lacking, now I am improving. But God does not live in time, and reality does not unfold in stages. Known unto God are all his works from the beginning of the world. There is no process in God, only being. So long as we identify ourselves as a personal entity moving through time, we inevitably live as effect. We believe something has acted upon us, genes, circumstances, other people, economic conditions, even our own past mistakes. But the infinite way reveals something startling and liberating. You are not an effect searching for a cause. You are cause appearing as effect. This is not flattering to the human ego. It is fatal to it. And that is why the ego resists this truth. It senses that its reign is ending. For if God is the only cause, and if God constitutes individual being, then there is no personal doer left to manage life. I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. This is not a goal. It is a recognition. Let us look honestly at this personal sense. It is the I that says, I am afraid. It is the I that says, I am unworthy. It is the I that says, I am trying to be spiritual. But Scripture tells us that which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. The personal sense belongs to the realm of flesh, not flesh as body, but flesh as concept, flesh as belief, flesh as the assumption of separation. And Paul tells us further, flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Why? Because concepts cannot know reality. A belief cannot behold truth. Only consciousness, unconditioned and unconfined, can know God. Now, this collapse of the personal self is not something you do to yourself. You do not deny it. You do not fight it. You do not try to get rid of it. You simply stop feeding it with belief and attention. The personal self dissolves when it is no longer believed to be real. Jesus never attempted to improve the personal man. He never tried to make the human self more spiritual. He said, ye must be born again, not repaired, born again. And this rebirth is not into a better humanhood, but into spiritual awareness. That which is born of the Spirit is spirit. The moment we begin to see that the personal sense has never been our true identity, fear begins to loosen its grip. Fear belongs to the belief in separation. Fear belongs to the belief that life can be threatened, diminished, or lost. But when identity shifts from person to presence, fear has no foundation. Perfect love casteth out fear, not human love, divine recognition. At first, this yielding may feel like uncertainty. The personal sense cries out, if I am not in control, what will happen? And the answer is given quietly, always quietly. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Peace does not come from controlling life. Peace comes from trusting being. Do not imagine that this yielding makes one passive or ineffective. On the contrary, it releases intelligence, guidance, and activity that do not originate in personal will. It is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. The highest action flows from surrender, not from strain. Here, then, is the great turning point. We stop saying, I am a person trying to reach God, and we begin to realize, I am the place where God is appearing. The former is effort. The latter is grace. The former is religion. The latter is revelation. When the personal sense collapses, it does not leave emptiness. It leaves presence. It leaves awareness. It leaves that still, luminous consciousness in which nothing needs to be added and nothing can be taken away. This is the peace that passeth understanding, because understanding belongs to the mind and peace belongs to being. So do not fear the fading of the personal self. What is fading was never real. What remains is what has always been. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, not as a person, not as a history, not as a name, but as being. And when this is even faintly recognized, life begins to move without friction. The burden of selfhood is lifted. The strain of becoming is gone. And one finds, almost with surprise, that what remains is not less life, but more life, without fear, without striving, without the constant pressure of self-improvement. Come unto me, the Master said, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Not instruction, not technique, rest. Now, as the personal sense yields and its claims begin to loosen, we come naturally, inevitably, to the next revelation. There is only one cause, not many causes, not competing causes, not a higher cause struggling against lower causes. There is only one cause, and that cause is I am. This is not philosophy. This is not theology. This is not metaphysical speculation. This is the foundation upon which all spiritual freedom rests. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. One, not first, not greatest among many, but one. And if there is one cause, then there cannot be a second, there cannot be an opposing force, there cannot be a power acting against God. The human mind immediately objects. What then of disease? What then of lack? What then of sin, accident, injustice, and death? And the answer must be given exactly as the Master gave it, not by argument, but by revelation. Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. If God is the only good, then evil has no source, and that which has no source has no law to sustain it. Here we must be very careful, for the intellect will attempt to twist this truth into denial or indifference. We are not saying that human experience does not present discordant appearances. We are saying that appearances do not constitute cause. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Righteous judgment is judgment from the standpoint of cause, not effect. When you see a shadow on the wall, you do not attempt to heal the shadow. You do not fight it. You do not pray over it. You simply turn toward the light, and the shadow disappears not because it was conquered, but because it was never a thing in itself. So it is with all discord. It exists only as belief in a cause apart from God. Now, let us see the immensity of what is being revealed here. If I am, is the only cause, then supply is not something that comes to you. Supply is something that flows from you. Health is not something added to you. Health is the natural state of life expressing itself. Intelligence is not something you acquire. Intelligence is the activity of divine mind appearing as your awareness. This is why Jesus never sought causes in the outer realm. He never asked, what caused this sickness? He never asked, who sinned? He said plainly, neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest. In other words, stop looking for causes in effect. Recognize the only cause and let it appear. The moment you accept yourself as an effect of heredity, of environment, of economy, of chance, you have surrendered your birthright. For God does not produce effects that must look elsewhere for their support. God appears as cause, appearing as effect, sustained by itself. I am that I am means I am self-existent being. Do you see now why fear dissolves when this is recognized? Fear always arises from the belief in a power other than God. Fear says, something can happen to me. But when you know that all cause is embodied in your own being, not as a person, but as presence, fear has nothing to attach itself to. The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? Now, let us go one step further, and this is where the revelation becomes practical. If I am is the only cause, then there is no power in conditions, no power in numbers, no power in time. Delay has no power. Prognosis has no power. History has no power. With God, all things are possible, not someday, not eventually, but now. This does not mean that we manipulate reality. It means we stop believing in unreal causes. We do not make harmony appear. We stop believing in discord as cause. And when false causation is withdrawn, the true cause stands revealed, and its effect appears naturally. Many have tried to make God work for them. That is why they struggle. But God does not work for you. God works as you. I and my Father are one, not partners, not allies, one. And in that oneness, the illusion of personal burden falls away. You will notice something very gentle but very profound when this begins to dawn in consciousness. The urgency to fix things diminishes. The anxiety to control outcomes fades. The constant inner dialogue about what must be done grows quieter. And in that quiet, guidance appears not as thought, but as knowing. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Why? Because understanding seeks causes in the realm of effect. Trust rests in the recognition of one cause. Here is the great secret that changes life without effort. You do not have to demonstrate supply, health, or harmony. You have only to stop denying the only cause. The moment cause is rightly identified, effect follows without strain. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you, added not produced by effort, but appearing as the natural accompaniment of right identification. So let us rest here for a moment. Let us feel the simplicity of it. One cause, one life, one power, one presence. And that presence is not somewhere else. It is the very awareness by which you are hearing these words. It is the consciousness in which thought appears and disappears. It is nearer than breath, closer than hands or feet. I am. And because I am is the only cause, There is nothing left to fear, nothing left to fight, nothing left to overcome. There is only the gentle yielding that allows what always is to appear as what we experience. Now we arrive at that point where words themselves must begin to fall away. Everything that has been said thus far has been said only to bring us to this threshold, for truth is never finally known through statement. It is known only through stillness, not the stillness of the body, not the stillness of controlled breathing, not the stillness produced by effort, but the stillness that remains when the desire to do has been surrendered. The prophet Elijah sought God in the wind, in the earthquake, and in the fire. But the scripture tells us plainly that the Lord was not in the wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire. And after these came a still small voice. That voice was not sound. It was awareness. It was the quiet recognition of presence. And it is this presence that reveals I am. We must understand this clearly. Stillness is not a practice that brings God near. Stillness is the absence of resistance to what is already present. God does not come when the mind becomes quiet. The mind becomes quiet when God is no longer resisted. The human sense always wants to enter stillness, to go into silence, to reach awareness. But where could you go to find that which already constitutes your being? Whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence? There is no place to go, because there has never been a place where God is not. So we do not close the door on thought by force. We do not banish the mind. We simply let thought pass as clouds pass across the sky, without following, without resisting, without judging. The sky does not fight the clouds. It remains itself. Consciousness does not struggle with thought. It remains aware. This is why the Master said, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. That closet is not a physical place. It is the inner chamber of awareness where the personal sense has ceased knocking. And when that door is shut, not against the world, but against effort, then prayer becomes communion. In this stillness, you are not waiting for something to happen. Waiting implies time, and time belongs to the realm of effect. In stillness, there is only being, and being does not wait. Being is, if the mind says, am I doing this right? Let that thought pass. If the mind says, nothing is happening, let that pass as well. Truth does not announce itself with sensation. Revelation does not depend on feeling. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed. Believe not in the sense of accepting a doctrine, but in the sense of resting in what is. It is here that many become impatient, because the personal sense wants evidence. It wants confirmation. It wants reassurance. But the soul is learning a deeper lesson, that God is known without proof, and presence is recognized without sign. My kingdom is not of this world. It does not come through the senses, and therefore it cannot be validated by them. Remain here, not holding, not seeking, not directing. Simply remain as awareness. Awareness of what? Awareness itself. That which knows thought is not thought. That which observes feeling is not feeling. That which is aware of silence is not silence. It is being. In this stillness, you may notice something very gentle, very subtle, a sense of effortlessness, a sense that life is not pushing against you, a sense that you are not required to uphold yourself. This is not something new entering. It is something old falling away. The burden of selfhood is loosening. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. But what is the burden? The burden is the belief that you are sustaining yourself. When that belief yields, sustenance reveals itself as natural, continuous, and unlabored. Do not try to name this experience. Do not try to hold it. Do not try to repeat it later. The attempt to possess stillness removes you from it. Stillness is not an experience. It is the ground of all experience. Here, in this quiet awareness, I am does not speak as words. It reveals itself as certainty. Not certainty about something, but certainty as being. There is no argument here. There is no explanation. There is only the gentle knowing, I am, not as a statement, not as a thought, but as reality. Be still, the voice says, again, not as command, but as invitation, and know. And in this knowing, nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be removed, nothing needs to be fixed. Life is not waiting for permission to be whole. It is whole. Rest here, not to achieve something, but because there is nowhere else to go. Now, having come to this stillness, something very subtle but very decisive takes place. Without effort, without announcement, the habit of asking begins to fall away, not because asking is forbidden, and not because desire is wrong, but because the consciousness that asks has quietly dissolved into the consciousness that knows. As long as we believe that God is separate from us, prayer must take the form of request. We ask for health, we ask for supply, we ask for protection, we ask for guidance. But the Master revealed a higher way when he said, Your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask him. Before, not after. Not because you asked correctly. Before. This one statement, if received, ends all anxious prayer. For if God already knows, then prayer cannot be informing God. If God already provides, then prayer cannot be persuading God. If God already is the fullness of being, then prayer cannot be trying to bring something into existence. Prayer, then, must be something else altogether. In the infinite way, prayer is not an act of speech. It is an act of surrender. It is the yielding of the belief that life is managed from the personal level. It is the quiet acceptance of the truth that all that constitutes your being is already established in divine consciousness. When ye pray, the Master said, believe that ye receive, and ye shall have. Notice carefully. Believe that ye receive, not that ye will receive. This is not optimism. It is recognition. It is not hope. It is awareness. It is the consciousness that knows fulfillment as present fact. Asking belongs to the sense of lack, and lack is never real. It is only a false identification. The moment identity shifts from effect to cause, from person to presence, lack has no place to stand. How can infinite being lack anything? How can the source seek supply? How can life ask for life? The prophet Isaiah speaks for God, saying, before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. This does not mean that God responds quickly. It means that there is no interval between cause and effect in spirit. Fulfillment is not delayed, it is revealed. So when you find yourself wanting to ask, do not condemn that impulse. Simply pause. Let the question dissolve in stillness. Let the need turn inward and discover its source. Very often, in that pause, the answer reveals itself not as words, but as peace. Peace is the sign that prayer has been answered. Not excitement, not emotional relief, peace. My peace I give unto you, the Master said, not as the world giveth. The world gives relief after change. Spirit gives peace before change. And when peace is present, change follows naturally. Now let us be very clear. This does not mean that you never speak to God. It means that speaking gives way to listening. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. Prayer matures from petition into receptivity. The lips grow quiet, and the heart becomes attentive. In this receptive state, guidance comes without strain, direction appears without planning, action unfolds without pressure. You find yourself doing what needs to be done, not because you decided, but because it became obvious. I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. Guidance is not shouted, it is seen. At this stage, you will notice that problems no longer dominate consciousness. They may still appear in the outer experience, but they no longer occupy the center. The center has shifted. You are no longer living from the circumference of life. You are living from its source. This is why the Master could say, even in the face of human need, take no thought. Not because needs are ignored, but because thought does not supply them. Supply flows from recognition, not from anxiety. The moment you stop asking life to give you something, you begin to experience life expressing itself through you. And this brings us to a very sacred realization. Prayer does not change God, and prayer does not change reality. Prayer changes consciousness. Or rather, prayer allows consciousness to return to its true nature. And when consciousness is restored to truth, experience follows. So let us rest here in this understanding. There is nothing to ask for, because there is nothing missing. There is nothing to persuade, because there is no resistance in God. There is nothing to wait for, because fulfillment is not in the future. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Not I shall not want someday, not I shall not want if conditions improve. Simply, I shall not want. Let that be enough. Now we reach a point where misunderstanding often arises, and it is important that we move slowly and reverently. When we say that I am is the only cause, and when we recognize that asking has ended because fulfillment is already present, the human mind is quick to ask, does this mean that I, as a person, am God? And the answer must be given clearly, quietly, and without compromise. No. It does not exalt the personal self, it dissolves it. The revelation is not that a human being becomes divine, but that the belief in a separate human self yields to the recognition of divine being appearing as individual form. The Master never taught personal deification. He taught divine incarnation. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. Not became flesh in the sense of limitation, but appeared as flesh, appeared as form, appeared as individuality, appeared as life expressed. Here we must be very careful to distinguish between personhood and individuality. Personhood is a mental construct, name, history, memory, fear, ambition. Individuality is divine expression, unique, infinite, without separation from source. God does not produce copies. God expresses himself as infinite variety, each expression whole, complete, and self-sustained. I and my Father are one, the Master said. And then, lest we imagine this to be a unique privilege, he added, that they all may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee. He did not exclude us. He did not elevate himself above humanity. He revealed the principle of being. So when we say that I am appears as you, we are not speaking of a personal you. We are speaking of consciousness itself taking individual form. Just as the ocean appears as wave without becoming less ocean, so being appears as individual without becoming divided. The wave does not create itself. It does not sustain itself. It does not direct the ocean, and yet it is never separate from the ocean. All that the ocean is, the wave expresses power, movement, depth, yet the wave claims none of it as personal possession. It simply is. This is the meaning of humility in the spiritual sense. Humility is not self-denial or self-deprecation. Humility is the recognition that there is no personal self to glorify. Why callest thou me good? The Master said, there is none good but one, that is God. And yet he lived goodness, spoke goodness, embodied goodness. Why? Because goodness was not his. It was God appearing. When this is understood, the struggle between pride and unworthiness ends. Pride belongs to the belief in personal power. Unworthiness belongs to the belief in personal lack. Both rest on the same false premise, a personal self apart from God. When that premise dissolves, both pride and shame disappear together. Here is the great liberation. You are not responsible for being divine. You are not required to live up to a spiritual ideal. You are not asked to imitate God. You are asked only to stop denying what already is. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Not develop this mind. Let it be. This is why spiritual living, when rightly understood, becomes natural. It is not a strain to be loving when love is recognized as the substance of being. It is not difficult to be guided when intelligence is known to be the source of consciousness. It is not burdensome to be generous when supply is no longer believed to be personal. You begin to notice that life lives itself. Words come when needed. Actions unfold without anxiety. Decisions are made without inner conflict. And when mistakes appear, and they may, the burden of guilt does not follow, because you are no longer identifying yourself as a personal doer struggling to be right. You are resting in grace. It is not ye that speak, the Master said, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. This is not poetry. This is experience. And it becomes experience the moment the belief in a separate self yields. At this stage, something very sacred occurs. You stop asking, what should I do? And begin living from a deeper awareness in which right action is spontaneous. You are not passive. You are receptive. You are not inactive. You are responsive. You are not directed by fear or ambition. You are moved by inner knowing. This is what it means to live as an instrument. An instrument does not originate music. It allows music to pass through. It does not choose the melody. It expresses it. And when the instrument is clear, the music is pure. So it is with individual being. When the personal sense no longer interferes, the divine expresses itself freely, and this expression is always harmonious, always intelligent, always loving, not because you are trying to be these things, but because that is what God is. Here, then, we see the true meaning of incarnation. God is not afar off. God is not waiting to descend. God is present as consciousness, appearing as you, right where you are. And when this is known, not intellectually, But quietly, life becomes a continual revelation. Christ in you, the hope of glory, not Christ beside you, not Christ above you, Christ in you. And yet, even this must be understood rightly. Not a presence inside a body, but being expressing itself as awareness. Rest in that. Now we come to a point that is often misunderstood by students of the spiritual path. When right identification is realized, when the sense of a personal self yields to the awareness of I am as the only being, there arises the question, what changes? And the answer is both very simple and very profound. Nothing changes, and everything changes. Nothing changes in the sense that God has not become more present than before. Truth has not improved itself. Life has not advanced. But everything changes in the sense that your relationship to what already is has been transformed. You are no longer living toward something. You are living from something. The fruits of this realization do not come by effort. They come by inevitability. By their fruits ye shall know them, the Master said, not by their affirmations, not by their declarations, not by their rituals. Fruits are not produced by strain. A tree does not work to bear fruit. It abides, and fruit appears. Peace is the first fruit, and it comes quietly. Not the peace of circumstances arranged to your liking, but the peace that passeth understanding, the peace that remains even when appearances are unsettled. This peace is not something you possess. It is something you cease resisting. Fear begins to dissolve, not because you have learned how to overcome it, but because fear cannot exist where there is no belief in a power apart from God. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? This ceases to be poetry and becomes fact when there is only one. Supply reveals itself in the same way, not as accumulation, not as hoarding, not as anxious provision for tomorrow, but as a continuous flow of adequacy. Your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. Supply is not the result of correct thinking. It is the outward evidence of inward recognition. Relationships, too, undergo transformation. You are no longer seeking completion through another, nor defending yourself against another. You begin to see every individual as the same I am appearing in different form. Judgment loses its foundation. Comparison becomes meaningless. Love ceases to be emotional attachment and becomes recognition. And then there is healing. Not healing as an event, not healing as a demonstration, but healing as the natural state of being. When false identification has been relinquished, disease has never been personal. It has always been a belief, a universal belief, accepted individually. When the belief in a self, separate from God, dissolves, the belief in discord loses its anchor. Healing, then, is not something you do to the body. It is something that happens when the body is no longer believed to be the source of life. The flesh profiteth nothing, the Master said, not because flesh is evil, but because flesh has no life of its own. The body responds to consciousness as shadow responds to form. Change the form, and the shadow changes automatically. There is no need to attack the shadow. One of the greatest freedoms that comes with right identification is release from personal burden. The belief that I must manage life, protect myself, plan outcomes, and secure the future is the root of exhaustion. This belief is not humility. It is arrogance masquerading as responsibility. When you know that I am is the doer, the planner, the sustainer. A great weight lifts. You still act, but action flows without tension. You still plan, but plans are held lightly. You still serve, but service is joyful because it is not personal sacrifice. Take my yoke upon you, the Master said, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This is not a metaphor. It is a law of being. When life is lived from I am, the burden is not removed by effort. It was never there to begin with. You discover that even mistakes lose their sting. When there is no personal ego to defend, error corrects itself. Guidance adjusts the course. Grace redeems what human judgment would condemn. All things work together for good to them that love God, not to those who struggle to control outcomes. This does not lead to passivity or indifference. On the contrary, it produces alertness, responsiveness, and intelligence. But the strain is gone. The anxiety is gone. The inner argument is gone. Life becomes simple. Now let us speak of prayer, for prayer is always transformed when right identification is understood. Prayer ceases to be petition. It ceases to be persuasion. It ceases to be an attempt to move God. Prayer becomes communion. When you know that God is not separate from you, there is nothing to ask for and no one to ask. Prayer becomes listening. Be still and know that I am God. Stillness is not a technique. It is the natural state when effort ends. True prayer is the awareness of what already is. It is the recognition of presence. It is the silent acknowledgement, thou art here. And in that recognition, human problems dissolve not because they were fixed, but because they were never real in the presence of reality. This is why the Master prayed before raising Lazarus, not to change death into life, but to acknowledge what was already true. Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I knew that thou hearest me always. Gratitude precedes demonstration because gratitude is recognition. Prayer, then, is not something you do at set times. It becomes the atmosphere of your life. Walking becomes prayer. Working becomes prayer. Silence becomes prayer. And even speech becomes prayer when it flows from awareness rather than desire. As right identification stabilizes, your perception of the world changes. You no longer see a world of conflicting powers, good struggling against evil, life battling death, abundance opposed by lack. You begin to see appearances as appearances, not as realities. This does not make you blind to suffering. It makes you free from being hypnotized by it. Compassion deepens, but fear recedes. You can respond without being overwhelmed. You can help without losing peace. Judge not according to the appearance, the Master said, but judge righteous judgment. Righteous judgment is spiritual perception, the ability to see through appearances to what is eternally true. This is the secret of spiritual authority. Not authority over people, not authority over events, but authority over belief. When belief loses its power, appearances follow. Finally, we come to the simplicity that underlies everything we have spoken. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to add, nothing to become. There is only abiding. Abide in me, and I in you. Abiding is not effort. It is not concentration. It is not repetition. It is resting in what is already so. You will not always remember. You will not always feel elevated. There will be moments when the old sense of self returns. Do not fight it. Do not condemn it. Simply return again and again to the quiet recognition, I am. Not I am sick or I am well, not I am successful or I am failing, just I am. Before adjectives, before labels, before history. In that stillness, truth reasserts itself, and life unfolds as it always has, effortlessly, intelligently, lovingly. Before Abraham was, I am. And before every problem, every fear, every need, I am. Rest there.